Hey, John here. Thanks for watching. So last time we were talking about global labels, which are these things over here that you create with this guy right there. And we built a schematic. Let's do a quick review. That looks like this. We have a root level page. On the page, we've got a connector and some global labels. We got a sheet for a power supply right here. Okay. We've got a sheet for a mic preamp, and then we got a sheet for another mic preamp. So let's look at a couple of issues that come up with this kind of design. Just like when you're writing software, you got to deal with, well, do I want to use a global variable or a local variable? That sort of thing when you're writing functions. Any algol-derived language like C or Python or Perl or JavaScript, you have to deal with this problem. Okay, so what did we do here? Well, we used all global labels, the equivalents of variable in a program, and we call them labels here, right? These things here are labels, as are the power symbols. All right, so I've got 3 global labels in this sheet, plus 12, minus 12, and ground. All right, so they become available to me in other sheets of the schematic, which is why I can put a plus and minus 12 here. And I'm referring to the same thing that this guy refers to down there, as well as in the mic preamps if I use a plus 12 and a ground over here. All right, so the notion of global, it should be pretty easy to understand, right? There's the other side of this reference to mic out 1. Up here, this is where it goes on this other sheet. Now, I've purposely referred to all these things as sheets to make sure that I remember to bring up the fact that KiCad also calls this thing here a sheet, all right? This is a sheet symbol, and they should have called it a sheet symbol or anything other than the word sheet because the page itself is referred to as a sheet since day 1 down here. So they kind of overload this term. So let's be really clear whether I'm talking about a sheet, a page, or a sheet symbol here. And the reason I want to make that really clear is because we're going to talk about these 4 icons over here in this side panel. And when you read things like this, place hierarchical label. Label will be seen as a hierarchical pin in the sheet. What do you mean by sheet, right? In what context, right? And where do you place this thing? Okay. When you're dealing with these 4 icons over here, if they say sheet, they mean this sheet symbol that you've created over here. If you don't know what this is, back up one and watch the previous video, because this is the right where I left off, same design. All right, so the sheet symbol over here is what they're talking about when they refer to sheets in this over here. Everywhere else in KiCad, as well as all engineering that I'm aware of, a sheet is a page of a schematic, like referred to down here. So let's really be careful about that. Okay. So what do we got? So far, I'm going to leave the power supply alone. It's somewhat reasonable to use global names for your ground and plus 12 and stuff like that, although some people would argue against that and suggest that those two should have some form of scope. All right? Well, let's dive into this a little bit. So what do we got here? What I did is I copied a previous project sheet into this sheet here. All right, by using this over here, I created a hierarchical sheet. I said it append schematic sheet. Again, further evidence that the symbol should have been called something other than a sheet, because all this refers to as these entire pages. So what I did is I copied a schematic sheet from another project into this one, and then I just changed this over here to have a global label on it using this pin over here. All right. Then I went back. This is, the 301. This is mic 1. Okay. In this sheet, in this root level page here, there's mic 1. Here's mic 2. All right. So the only difference between these 2 sheets are the names on this global label right here. This could get really nasty if these things had, a dozen or 2 dozen or 100 things, nets, that needed to be extended out of this sheet and shared amongst other sheets. You end up with naming problems just like you do when you write software. So guess what? Global labels are probably not our friend. You can use them in simple schematics like this one here. They're perfectly fine, but as things get complicated, you're better off not using them and using instead, just like when you're writing software, pass in arguments to a function and return a value so that in the context of this one sheet symbol and or the sheet behind it, you can deal with everything on an enclosed basis, right? So you don't end up with name conflicts, right? If you're bringing in a lot of these sheet symbols and appending in lots of things that are shared among other projects, the odds that you would accidentally name something the same thing, and if you're using global labels, of course, you'd have to go in there and re-edit them all and make sure they're all unique. Giant pain in the butt. So just like, the argument holds for software, same thing holds here. So inside this sheet, if instead I'm using a global label, I use a hierarchical label, let's watch what happens here. Let's call this one, let's just call it out. All right, now it's an output, so I'm going to do this. Again, I think this is just a shape. I'm not sure the design rule checks care whether an output is an output or an input and all that sort of thing. This may only be visual. Now, a couple of things happen. Just like with a global label, the mere fact that I placed this hierarchical label on this sheet and gave it a name means I've named a net in this sheet with this name out. Therefore, if I did something like place a name on this net like this, out, these two now are connected, all right? Because this introduces a name into the context of the sheet within which this label has been placed. All right, so I'm going to delete this. It's the same as hooking it up like that. All right, same thing with the global label. Now, what's neat here is I can call this thing out. I can go up. I'm in mic 1 there. Let's go to mic 2, and I'm looking up here, by the way, to remember which one I'm on. Let's put another one called out. We can name them both the same way. Why? Because in the context of a sheet, these are not global. That's the key. I have an out on this sheet and I have an out on another sheet. Well, those are both local net names. In order to get to them over here, I can use this other thing with this blue arrow. It says place hierarchical pin imported from the corresponding hierarchical label. Again, that meant nothing to me the first time I read KiCad 5 or any KiCad. Let's think about what the heck they're trying to convey here. I want a pin. I'm going to add a pin to this symbol. And the pin is going to come from, it's imported from a label. So the subtlety here is pins go in the sheet symbols, labels go in the sheets, okay? So click this. Now what's going to happen is KiCad knows all the labels in this sheet. So if I left click on here, it says go find all the labels in the sheet that the sheet symbol here represents. And if there are any labels in that sheet, put one as a pin in this sheet symbol here. So I just clicked again and placed it right there. Let me click a second time in here. I know full well there's only one down there. I just put it in there. Click it a second time, it says there's no more. Okay? So if I had 4 of them down there, every time I click in here, it would keep adding the next one, the next one, and the next one. All right? So that's how you import them into this sheet symbol. So let's go ahead and do this one down here as well. Okay. Now, in the sheets, the mic 1 and the mic 2 sheet underneath, the back behind this sheet symbol, there is a net called out and another net called out here. They're different outs because they're local nets in these sheets. So as a result, KiCad will not propagate this label into this sheet here, into the root, the parent, right? Because it doesn't make sense. And it doesn't make sense because if I just place a bunch of sheets, they might both have the same name and all that other stuff. So it's up to me now as the designer to name this in the context of the parent sheet here, if I want to name it at all. Let's just grab this, bring it over here. I don't have to name it. You don't have to name it anywhere. As we know, the KiCad will generate names for us if we don't name them. But let's play some games here. Let's connect it up like this. Let's make sure it's connected. Save. All right. Let's do a design rule check to make sure that I'm not messed up in the head. Okay, we're done with that. So now what do we got? We got sheet mic 1 out going to this pin here, and sheet mic 2 out going to that pin there. And this is all fine and dandy. Let's make a net list and have a look-see at what this did. All right, where's my regular old terminal? I don't know what we are in. I'm messing with this design right here. And let's have a look-see at the net list and see what this really is. So I have these many nets. I have an out in the 2 sheets. See, mic 2 out and mic 1 out. Clearly they're local labels. They're not global because they start with a slash. The sheet name is prepended to the net name. This is what makes them unique. All right. And bound to the sheet. So there's 2 outs, but they're different because this is mic 2 out, this is mic 1 out. Well, what happens is, well, this goes between, R405 and C401 on the mic 2 sheet, and it goes to J0101 pin 3 right here on the root sheet, right? Boom, boom, like this. All right. So this is how these ones connect versus a global pin like +12, as you know, does not have a slash in front of it. Okay, and the rest of these are all unnamed nets on the various sheets because they're not significant meaningful wise. So this is how you use a hierarchical pin. You can use them for outputs, inputs, whatever. You can even run a bus through here. And again, the bus naming conventions we talked about earlier in the net video all apply. So I can run an entire bus full of signals out of here and connect it however I want. So this helps deal with schematics with a large number of shared pins where you don't want to deal with worrying about name clashing, okay? Now, there's one other thing now that happens. Remember, I copied a schematic into this page, this sheet, and I copied the same schematic into this sheet down here. As it is right now, these 2 schematics, these 2 sheets are 100% identical. That cannot be done. It cannot be said when I have a global label over here that's called out 1, and in the other sheet it has a global label called out 2. They differ, and the only way they differ is that one global label. So this is pretty cool now. What I can do here is go into this sheet. In fact, let's just delete it. Let's delete one of these. I just clicked in the middle and hit delete. It's gone. If you're going to reuse a schematic page, what you can do is go over here, place a hierarchical sheet just like this. Instead of creating mic 1 and mic 2 in these schematic files, I can call both of them mic 1 if I wanted to. Remember, this is called mic 1 SCH. Then the sheet name is mic 2, all right? Or more accurately, this sheet symbol will be called mic 2, just like this sheet symbol is mic 1. The file the backing file of this sheet is mic 1. The backing file of this will also be mic 1, okay? This is perfectly reasonable, okay? It warns you, are you sure you want to do this? Yes, I am. Now, what happens here is I have only one schematic sheet. If I edit this in any way, let's put a, well, first of all, let's look at the other one. It's in the other one. It miraculously has an out on it already. Why? Because I added it to this one up here. All right. Let's put something else in here. Let's throw in I don't know. Let's. All we need to do really is move something, right? Let's just move this thing over here. Save. Now let's go to the top. Right, we're dealing with sheet mic 1 in the file mic 1. Now we're going to deal with sheet mic 2 in the file mic 1, okay? And it moved over here as well. So now when you're having a repeating set of schematics, you modify one, they all go. They're exactly the same, okay, in every way, except for their annotation. This is pretty nifty. Now when we annotate, let's just re-annotate this whole thing. Reset everything. First free after 100. We talk about that in the video on global labels and what all that means. Why am I missing a footprint? What did I do? Oh, I forgot to put a footprint on my connector. Let's go ahead and do one of these. Find one. I don't care. A 4-pin. Let's find one in the 254 header. There we go. Vertical. There we go. Good enough. Okie dokie. Why did I end up in here? I don't know. Okay. We've now just done an annotation. Save. Let's do our design rule check rule again here. Uh-oh. Mismatch between hierarchical labels and pin sheets. Oh, no. What did I do wrong? Out. Go to the parent. This should work. Oh, I forgot to add the out on here. And the unconnected pin is the one that I forgot to do. Okay, great. Fine. Do this again, right? Put the out on there. Escape. Now, unfortunately, you have to do this every time, right? Until it says there are no more. I just simply forgot to do that. Let's go ahead and redo the design rule check. It should be fine now. There we go. All right, fine. So whatever. That happens to me like 80% of the time when I do this. I forget to put some pins in one of these while I'm evolving the design. So what are the benefits here, right? Well, this is wonderful now. Just like a subroutine, you can just write it once and reuse it. In fact, I don't even need to make a copy of the sheet and append it to this schematic. I could just tell the schematic to go over and use it where it is in the other project even if I wanted to. But if I do that, I have to be very careful that if I modify it for some reason, that I'm not going to adversely impact like all of the other projects that might also be using that same SCH file. So I still tend to copy them for this whole purpose of just kind of like locking it in at the time of a particular design. That's just my choice. You can do anything you want. But this is hugely useful in my opinion. Hierarchical labels are definitely the way to go. And mainly because you can do this sharing and all this other fun stuff that goes along with it. So let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Bye.